Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another Skill Riders podcast episode. This is episode number 220 with your host, 65 Locs, on the commute, hitting the roads throughout Southern California, covering model car culture from around the world. I hope you guys are doing good. Well, trying to stay cool. I know the temperatures have been really high in a lot of areas. For the most part, where I'm at, it's been hitting upwards to, the highest 95 to 100, and the lowest being anywhere from like 80 degrees. But when it's hot, when it's super hot, it makes it really hard to paint. I've heard people say they paint in different temperatures, and it ends up working out. I don't think I've ever had an issue with my paint jobs due to temperature. Just because I'm spraying a small amount of paint onto the model cars. If anything, it's more just the discomfort of being in a garage or in a room, spraying and just feeling the elements of the heat, mixed with the paint and everything that makes it uncomfortable. But for the most part, I rarely paint outside. My setup's more of an indoor setup where the temperature can be quite controlled, but then again it's always like somewhat in the middle sometimes. So like if it's too hot outside, it's not gonna be that hot inside, but like somewhere in the middle, But lately I've been back in the booth spraying up more and more model cars. I'm actually finishing up a second paint job on another model car. This one being one of the, I believe it's the DDA, the Kingswood Australian car. And this car was gifted to me, this model kit, by Slowly Models out in Australia. Shout outs to him. And when I got this car in my hands, it was interesting, going back and forth, through conversations with Slowly, talking about this particular model, this line of models that had came out, how fun and exciting this was of a new chapter that was being created, especially these being Australian cars that were being driven and seen out in those areas. And for them to have that now in the possession to work a model car, to build it to their liking, is pretty cool. I know we have a lot of cars that we get made here, and sometimes we take it for granted because we're just used to seeing American cars being made into model car kits, or we're used to seeing European or Japanese cars being made by their companies. But to have this model being created was pretty cool. And getting the kit, I was impressed by the box, because it's a bigger size box, and as you open it, you start to see it seems more of a premium, because just the way it's laid out and like the things that are in it in the kit, and like there's this like piece of like plastic material that is still protecting the kit even after you open the lid, and then there's like instruction booklet and all that inserted on top. Everything is obviously bagged, and you start to pull out the kit, and you just start to see how it all just fits together really great. But from what I learned is that these castings from a lot of these come from die-cast cars, so a lot of this stuff is definitely going to fit perfect together. But with that said, you could still modify the car. You could still, if you want to sand off parts from the body, if you want to modify the suspension, if you want, you could do anything, especially for the advanced modeler. Any ideas that you have, you can definitely do the hood and trunk open. Does come with an engine, and there's a lot of different versions of it out there. So it just depends which version. The one I have, it's more of a custom. I believe it's like a twin turbo engine, and it's just to your liking of how you want to do it. The one thing I was tripping out on was the seats, like the two front seats. It's like this like rubber material that was created and molded into a seat, and it has like this like bottom piece as an insert that you just attach to the floor of the interior. And the back seat, that's styrene, so that's just plastic right there. But I prepped and I primered everything in the interior. And as far as like that rubber type material, comparing that to the styrene, when I sprayed it with the Tamiya primer, it's well uniformed. I didn't know what was gonna happen. I didn't know if it was gonna like reject it or not, just because of the material being wrong, like not wrong, different. I did wash the parts. I washed them, and I even wet sanded them with 400 grit just so they have some tooth. Once I dried all the parts, I just went ahead and I just primered them gray, and I left them like that. As far as the paint job of this Kingswood, I started off with spraying the model with Tamiya gray. And with the gray, what I like about it is that it shows you the imperfections. It shows you things that need to be worked on. And I just started sanding, those areas, and it was very minimal. It wasn't really a lot. I decided to shave off the door handles. So the door handles, those are inserts. So the cool thing is that I was at least able to attach the door handle so it's like nice and flush, and those little gaps around the door handle I was able to fill in with glue. So once I got that filled in, I went ahead and sanded it, primered it, just to see how well it looked, if I did cover everything. Because when you're applying this glue, it's transparent, so sometimes it's quite hard to see if you really fill it in clean. And then and sometimes it doesn't happen. It's going to take a few times of adding glue, sanding, adding glue again on another session, and then sanding again, and like doing the whole reprimer thing over and over in those parts. One thing I did quite learn with applying the CA glue as a gap filler for areas like this. Before, I used to just pour out the glue onto a little sheet of tape, and I would get the toothpick and I would just grab the glue and attach it, right? Like dab it on. But what happened is that this glue, I kept adding it when it was freshly like out of the bottle. And I always felt like it was just more work doing this whole thing. So this time around, what I was doing was I was letting the glue sit for a little bit, just so it got a little bit more gummy and it wasn't too like liquidy, because now it's out, it's exposed, it's starting to not harden up, but it's starting to get really gummy. And then I'd get the toothpick and then scratch off like a small little piece of glue off the tape and then start to apply it. And as I would apply it, I could see that now the thickness of this glue being quite gummy, I was able to like fill in those gaps and then run the toothpick flat on its side. So this way it's making that contact and it's starting to kind of pack it in, flush it in, the glue. And then I'd get a little more and then I'd do more. If I saw any lumps, I would right away get another toothpick and I would scrape that off. I would try to get it as flat as possible on there, just because if you leave those lumps, it's just going to be more work of sanding. So I try to get it as flat as possible, and then after that I let it dry, and then I would just spray it with the primer. I noticed by doing it this way, it was less work as far as the sanding. I wasn't really having to sand too much. I was also using Gun Primer has this this like flat acrylic piece that you could attach sanding piece of sanding sheet that you cut out to it. It's called the sand loop, but it's nice and flat. So instead of using a file or a sponge pad, I needed basically like just something with a really flat surface, almost like a little mini block, just so I could sand that down flat. And that was the tool I was using to sand down those areas there. I also went ahead and filled in the vents. I wanted to get that filled in for that custom look. Did the same procedure and then just sanded it, flattening it a little bit. Not too much, but just a little bit. I still wanted to have it shape to contour with like the hood of the car and everything. And then once all that was like set, I just started a primer. And once I felt like the car was like, all right, the car is fully primered, it's ready. The next step was I needed to paint the car white now, based on the colors that I was going for. Because if I leave it gray, and then I start to spray my colors, it just wasn't gonna make any sense. Because I was gonna go with these lighter colors like white and lavender. So I had to spray it with House of Color Pure White, which is a urethane color, and I sprayed that over the gray primer. So I got that, everything white. I let that gas out. Within 4 hours you can start applying your next effect or coat of paint on there. But I just decided to wait another day. I left it alone, and then when I came back, I went ahead and I sprayed my white pearl over that House of Color Pure White. So now what was happening is that you started to see the pearl pop more because it has a white foundation underneath it. So the tone is a bit more brighter. And most people would say, well, why wouldn't you just primer the body white and then just skip the step of hitting the base with pure white and then just go with pearl? You could do stuff like that with these smaller projects, but the thing with white primer is that I know for myself, sometimes I don't really see imperfections. I can't catch them as fast as if I'm doing them with the gray primer. And sometimes I've done that where I've done all gray primer, and then from there I've switched over to spraying white primer over and doing all those steps. But since I already have the pure white from House of Color, I just decided to use it this way. So once the white primer was laid down, the white pearl was laid down, I just let that chill too for like at least a couple more days. But it's the same. You can start working that material right away too, because when it flashes out like flat and more of a matte finish. It's not glossy or anything like that. You don't get to see any of that until you clear coat it. So then with the model, just being the way it was, I was part of the set. It came with some masks to do some stripes, and these masks were produced by Lazy Modeler, also in Australia. And I was like, you know what? I've never done a car with stripes, and I was like, let me just go ahead and apply these onto the car, and I started to cut out the two pieces, and I took my time. There was no rush, and I managed to line everything up following the instructions that he gives, and I attached them to the car. It also had this little like pinstripe piece of tape that you can add on there. But at the end, I just kind of decided to take it off, that part, the little pinstripe tape. But everything else, it was kept on there. So once I had the mask on the front and then the mask on the back, I started to backmask the rest of the car, just covering it with green tape from 3M. And once I got the car into the booth, I mixed up some purple candy. So with this mix was quite different, because with previous mixes, when I've done candy paints from House of Color, I've always used SG100 with reducer and the candy. This time around, I wanted to try the other product, which is Transnebula, with the reducer and the candy. So I went ahead and I mixed that together. It was experimentation. I mean, I heard great things. I've heard the pros talk about you can mix these things. This is from the new Sherman line. All this stuff is intermixed, and you could the possibilities are endless, right? With the Transnebula, that's like the foundation of the paint lines of Sherman 2 from House of Color. So I was like, all right, let me see what's gonna happen here, because I've never used it before. So I mixed it up, had the purple candy, poured it into my Iwata airbrush, the HPCS, and I started to spray purple candy along the edges of the mask from the inside, you know? So basically creating a fade with the overspray. You know, so I wasn't spraying directly into the lines. I was spraying on the outside of the straping lines. So it starts to give that like fade fog effect in there. And then once that was like laid out, I was like, all right, cool. Let me go ahead and like take this off, so this way I could get more of a visual. So I got to see a visual of the car, of how it looks. So now you had a whole car that was pearl white, and then it had some fades with some racing stripes. I was like, all right, cool. Like, because I never see that in cars. I always see the stripes painted really dark, like it's just solid, either all white or like a black, you know, just solid. And these were, you could see the outline of it, but it was more of a fade that was in there. And then after that, I know I wanted to add flake to it, but I really had to think about where it was going to go. You know, I've thought about putting it on the sides of the doors, like doing like a clean, straight, you know, just covering the back, the front door. But then again, I was like, nah, I don't know. You're really not going to see that, you know, in the light or when the sun hits it, unless you have a light sideways hitting the body. So then I thought, all right, well, what about the roof? Well, if I do the roof, you know, I kind of already did a car with the roof on the previous build. So I need to add a little more. And then I started to, you know, stare at the body lines, stare at the car, and see what the car was telling me, like what areas to spray, you know, the metal flakes with the candy on there. So then by looking at it, I knew, all right, I could see how like right here I could break it up, and then this will be the transition into that. So it had me for a while, man, just thinking, and then finally, like, I was gonna go to sleep, and I was like, oh, I'll think about it as I'm like getting ready to go to bed. But then I couldn't really sleep because that idea was there of the visual I had. So now I had to go back to the bench, pull out the car, and start masking it the way. And that right there took like 2 hours to mask the car. And when I was done masking it, now I was ready for sleep, like for bed, you know, because now I was tired. I was like, all right, cool. I got my idea out. I feel a little tired now. Now I'm just ready to go to sleep. So just knocked out. Next day, early morning, before it starts to get hot, temperatures are around 70, 75 degrees. I was like, all right, cool. Let's go ahead and start getting this ready for paint. And I started to spray Orion Silver Max over the white, the white pearl, basically the area that I was gonna lay the flake on, So I went ahead and I Orion silvered it. So now the silver base is there. It has like a really nice metallic like sparkle in there. And then after that, I needed to start prepping my metal flake. So then I went ahead and got the Tropical Glitz Platinum Plus flake, mixed it up with the this one was with SG100 and also the reducer. Had all that mixed up, and then I poured that into the little big mouth bottle, and then I used my other airbrush and I ended up spraying all the metal flake on there. Once I got it on there, I let that dry for, man, I think it was just like that day, because I had done the Silver Max and I let that dry for 4 hours. I came back and then I did the metal flake, and then that one I was like, all right, I'm gonna just leave this one overnight. I'm not gonna mess with it. I've already been kind of doing a lot right here. So then the next day came, and I started to work back on the car, getting the candy ready. And then once I had the candy all mixed up and everything again, the same purple, I was like, all right, cool. Let me go ahead and spray my purple candy. With this one, I was gonna use my HPCS airbrush, but since I was gonna be doing larger areas like a roof, I wanted to get a better coverage, and I wanted to also not take too much time spraying candy. So I just went ahead and I started to use my HPTH pistol grip airbrush. So with this airbrush, you're able to get at least about an inch to 2 inches of a fan pattern when you spray. And when you have that type of a fan pattern, you do get a lot of coverage on there, especially on a roof. So, or already when you're doing like a few passes on there, you're already covering up the roof on a model car, and this avoids striping. This avoids a lot of things right there. So this way, you don't like mess up this paint job right there, Don't worry, guys, I'm not getting pulled over. That was somebody else. And yeah, it ends up working out a lot faster. It's more uniformed. And at that point, I was like, all right, cool. I got it down to how I wanted the car to look. And then from there, I just let it just dry out. And after that session was done, I took off the tape. I took everything off, let it dry, and I came back the next day to look at it in the sun. And this is before the clear coat, but by then you start to see like the colors, after they dry, like the kind of tone that they take on there, And then from there, I was just like, all right, cool. The candies match. Not exact, but they're really, really close of what they match. Because I didn't want to go too dark either. I wanted it to match on the hood, especially since I'm going with the white pearl base, and there is white that's being exposed on the body. I didn't want to go too heavy. I wanted both colors to complement each other. almost looking more like a lavender on there. Because with candies, since they're so transparent, each pass you give it and you layer over and over and over, it's just going to keep getting darker, darker, and darker. And once you go, too far, you can't go back. You just can't. And even if you try to match it with something else and you forget how many passes you did or what, it's going to be really, really hard to try to have it match, because one's always going to be a bit darker than the other, So yeah, now having that car pretty much dry from all that, then I found an opportunity in the morning to clear coat it, because I was like, all right now I'm not going to add any other graphics. Let me just clear coat it. Let's get that going. So I went ahead and got my House of Color show clear, mixed it up, 3 parts clear to 1 part of the catalyst, 150 RU 152, and then or just catalyst 152, and then the RU 311, which is the reducer for my area, and I just went ahead and I mixed all that in together. I made sure my airbrush was clean, ready to go, had the model prep ready to go, and then I started applying my clear coat set. Like, the session just began, started adding the first coat of clear, more of a mist coat, like a tack coat, really light, just to start getting it on there, onto the body, and then waited 10 minutes after that session, came back second time around, and this is going to be more of a wet coat. With this coat coming in, I had to spray more of a heavier coat onto the flake, because what was happening is that you have to bury the clear on the flake, and if I go really light with the clear on top of the flake, it's not gonna submerge the flake, where it's gonna be very like grainy. It's just gonna look super grainy on there. So yeah, you have to bury it so it doesn't look all grainy there, because I've seen a few models in the past where you could tell where it needed more clear on there, and like it just looks grainy. It looks like, it reminds me of like sandpaper, or like the grit tape on a skateboard, just wet. Like you can still see that grit like spiking out, has that roughness if you feel it. But yeah, it's not supposed to look like that. You're supposed to like just bury that clear so it's nice and smooth at the top. But with this session that I did, I was when I was done, I brought it out to the sun for a little bit, and I was just looking at it, making sure the positioning of the model on the stand was straight, not just leaning on one side or the other, or else, I don't want the clear to be moving in one direction. And I let the sun hit it just a little bit, just so it already starts like, warming up, hardening that clear there. You're supposed to give it a 24-hour cure time. I'm going to give it about a couple days. I would say within those couple days, once I'm ready to handle the model, I'm just going to do like a quick little mock-up of what I got going on with it, with like the bumper, the headlights, and with the chassis and everything else from there. One thing I would need to do is wet sand the car. So I'd most likely be, depending how much, but I'd probably be at like 4,000 to 6,000 grit, and just work it from there. Just to like knock down any high areas where you could feel it. First you're supposed to do the feel. If you feel like, oh, okay, there's a little piece of lint or something sticking out, I need to knock that down. Then you bust out with the polishing pads and you get it sanded off. So that way, you have like this little nice tooth. As you're sanding, I mean, that clear session you did on that car is gonna go dull. So don't freak out. It's just part of it. you're supposed to just sand it, get it nice and smooth. Be careful with the edges, so that way you don't burn right through. Especially since I sprayed over a flake, you also got to be careful with the flake as well. You don't have to go too rough. Just go really light. And even with those higher grits, it helps. It's not going to burn through, So once you have that all set up, ready to go, you wash the model, make sure it's nice and clean. And it's going to require another session of clear, which is called the flow coat. With this session, you pretty much just add a little bit more reducer to the clear. So this way, as you spray, you want to spray at least 2 wet coats of clear, but also with some flash time in between. But when you do these, when you over reduce, what it does is it helps this clear to flow out, just laying out, filling in, whatever little areas or whatever you send it down. Just that smooth, like it's just gonna give you like a really nice touch at the end, And then once you have it done, it's good to go. And then after that, obviously what's gonna be ready for is gonna be the polishing that's gonna be coming in right there. And once you do the polishing on the body, then the body's done and assembly is what's next. But let's say before I get to the flow coat, if I still wanted to add graphics to it, I could still do it at this point, because it's almost like whatever I had done, I've already protected that artwork. I protected the fades, I protected the flake, so I could still lay more tape on top and start, doing whatever graphics that I want to lay over, if I wanted to do that, But I don't know. At this point, I just feel like what I've done so far is like enough. Like that's cool. Like I'm happy with that. I don't want to overkill it. I don't want to use all the eggs, in one basket. Like it's just sometimes less is better, And in my eyes, I mean, I'm satisfied with how I have it right now. Unless like, this idea popped in my head and I was like, dude, I got to do this, But nah, I think the way I have it, I'm like pretty happy with it. And that's going to be like another model that will be completed like pretty soon. As far as the Nissan Cedric, from the previous podcast, I talked about it, what I was going to do. The car is pretty much done. We're already at the tail end of the month here of July, and I managed to finish it at least 2 weeks prior to the due date. So the car's been finished. I just gotta take some photographs and submit those in, and that'll be it. It was a fun experience. I felt like the 2 months was definitely like enough time to work on a build. I did a very minor amount of like modifications to the car to give it that like custom look. But I felt what made the process faster was just doing, I had to do with the factors in, I would say, would be the experience, but also the tools. Like having the right tools helped a lot to do what I needed to do, And I think back to the time when I didn't have all the right tools and how things were being prolonged and just taking longer and longer and longer. And I was spending more money on my kits and like paints and stuff, but I was kind of lacking on the tools. So then once I started to spend more on tools and like collect and like see the benefits of each and which ones were the ones, in my toolbox I knew like, all right, these are my two go-tos, these are my favorites. All these others, they're cool, but I don't use them as much, but it's still, I need them. I'm gonna put them in a different toolbox, because I have a couple toolboxes where I have the like all my tools are in there, but then I have this other one that's on top of my bench. That's a small one, and those are pretty much like my quick like to go tos that I often use all the time. You know, when I'm gonna get started on a car through a process and to the end. But once I'm getting into other parts of it, I start busting out everything little by little. You know, it's like for example, towards the end of my builds, I have my Dremel, I have my polishing pads, the polishing bits, my wires, compound, and all that. And I like to keep all that stuff, you know, organized and together. So this way, when I know, okay, I'm entering now this phase of the project, I pull all that stuff out, and I know, you know, what stage I'm on, beginning to end, and go from there. And the same with the beginning, you know, when it comes down to like doing body work, sanding, you know, there's certain tools I use in the beginning for cleaning the body, cleaning the mold lines, filing things away, using tape to mask stuff. You know, there's all these like different steps that go along. And I apologize, guys, for the yawning. It's just I got up super early this morning and I had to do a bunch of errands before I headed out. I'm gonna go see my father right now. It's his birthday, so I gotta hang out with the fam for a bit, see my dad, chill out, and then later I'll, you know, go back to my pad. I gotta pick up my daughter from daycare and all that, and then, you know, just hang out. But till the weekend is when it'll be more of a relaxed celebration kind of thing. But for now, you know, I wanted to bust this mission, come out, say what's up, wish him a happy birthday, and just like hang out. But yeah, it's just I'm drinking some tea right now. I didn't even get coffee. I was just like, I've been kind of chilling off the coffee for a minute, so I've just been drinking the English breakfast tea right there. And you know, it's been fun painting and just working with these cars and everything. It's just taking me back to like the time when I was very busy with painting stuff and just becoming very addicted to painting, like just liking to painting this and that. And I mean, now, you know, I see my daughter growing up. She's like a little bit more independent on stuff, and at the same time, you know, the opportunities of when's family time and when's work time and when's work time for myself. We all need time for ourselves. I know that, you know, we can be very, very responsible and everything, but we have to give ourselves some time, even if it's an hour or 2 hours. We owe it to ourselves to give ourselves some time, and there's nothing selfish about it. And even if you have to put your foot down and stand your ground, you got to do it. You got to stand up for yourself. You got to do it. You know, don't let the things you love to do, you know, just be taken away from you, and that's it. And you got to give it up, and you can't do it no more, because then that leads to misery, and that leads to, you know, depression and a lot of other stuff. And, you know, each one of us needs to unwind. We need to filter out our artistry. We need to, you know, get the vision of what we have out of our system into the canvas. And I understand, you know, it's tough sometimes. We get overwhelmed with work. We get overwhelmed with family. You know, we feel tired. And finally, when we have the energy and we have the time, and everything seems to be right in place when we're getting ready to work on our stuff, and then something comes crashing down or strike down, like that you're unable to do it, or you can't, or maybe someone's telling you, don't do that, why you still, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things where, I mean, you have to make a wise decision as to the appropriate time to do it. But at the same time, when there is opportunity for yourself, I mean, do it up. Like, just do it up, you know? Don't resist. Don't hold back. Just do it. For myself, my window of opportunity right now is in the mornings. Like I said, I got 1 hour to paint or to do whatever. But I tend to devote it to painting, and that's from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. That's the only time I have to paint. The weather's great. It's between 70, 75 degrees, especially around during the summer before it gets hot. This is like a time before I gotta cook or eat breakfast. I don't eat breakfast till 9. I could eat it at 8, but I'm like, nah, I gotta do it now. Unless I wake up super early and I want to make something early in the morning, but that's not gonna happen. And then, my daughter is already in daycare. I got that hour. I don't start work till 9. And then I go ahead. I prep the night before, get my stuff sprayed up. I just, put it away, let that stuff cure. I focus on my work and other stuff, packaging orders, answering phone calls for my day job. And then finally, once it's time to drop stuff off, get it out, drop it off, make sure everybody, gets their packages and everyone's happy with their stuff. And it makes me happy because I feel like this, every order that comes in, it's a responsibility. I have to get it out in a timely manner, and I want everyone to have their stuff to fulfill, their idea of their build that they want to complete. Whether it's the kit, the tools, the paint, whatever it is, any little those things, I know that this is going to be used for a model build. It's going towards that goal. So I feel happy and like very just like satisfied. Like, yo, like we're all in this together. As much as you're building right now, I'm building too, and it's just dope. Like, I know how it feels like. I know what it, when I'm waiting for a package and stuff like that. So it's like hell yeah, I get pumped. And then, once the afternoon comes up, then it's time to hang out with my daughter and my fiance and just chill. And just it's family time, family time. Once they're asleep, I got another hour or two before I go to sleep. Now it's time to work on something or prep or whatever. Those are my times right there. And yeah, there's times where I might not feel it because I'm tired or whatever, but at least I know tomorrow I'll get back on it, or 3 days or a week or whatever, or maybe it's not even about working on anything. It's more about brainstorming. I could spend an hour or 30 minutes just browsing through the internet, looking at photos, looking at color combinations, watching House of Color videos on YouTube, re-educating myself on painting over and over, just watching it over and over and over and over. I'll always pick up on something new that I didn't pick up the first time. And it's like, all right, cool. Like, this is fun. Looking at what people are doing on Instagram and all that on social media, it definitely it helps and it's an influence, But yeah, another thing, that I was just talking about like shipping out packages is during these last couple of weeks, I had to do some changes to the site and make some decisions as to like shipping stuff out. Just because, what did we have recently just happened in the U.S. that was really big, that everybody, I'm pretty sure, was aware of in the news, with UPS going on strike. They were going to go on strike the beginning of August. So there was like this contract deadline, July 31st. It was about to expire. And a lot of things were going to happen that were not going to benefit drivers, that were not going to benefit part-time workers and all this stuff. So with my website, I use USPS and UPS. So if they would go on strike, this was definitely going to affect my business, along with a lot of online businesses and everybody, even a consumer, just because of items. There was not going to be no deliveries. Nothing was going to move. Things were just going to be at a standstill. Planes weren't even going to fly. Like, a lot of things were not going to happen. So UPS is a big staple, and they play a big role in the economy, in business, and everything with packages. And when you're shipping out heavy, large packages, they do have better rates compared to like the postal service, because they don't really handle too much of the bigger stuff, or freight. Their stuff's more on the smaller box size stuff, right? So those are quite big differences there. And for a minute I had to prepare myself and be like, yo, well, like if they go on strike, I can still ship stuff, but it's gonna have to be through USPS when it comes to larger stuff. So I was dealing with that, like debating. But now, as we know, they come to a tentative agreement, which is going to prevent the strike. It seems like the things that they demanded, they are going to get. So from what I see in the news, or from what I read on Twitter, it's saying that this was like a historic agreement thing, a win for the Teamsters. So, which is good. I mean, these guys do work hard and everything, and yeah, we do have our complaints too. Workers not handling packages right, tossing them, losing them, and doing all this stuff. They do work hard too, and that needs to be acknowledged as well. As much as people want to acknowledge the negative, the positive as well. I just hope that, hopefully by workers getting better pay and everything, it motivates them to, also take for the part-time, workers, if they're going to be getting paid better, to just take the job more seriously, where the packages are being handled correctly and better, so they don't get crushed, so they don't, get lost and all this stuff. But I don't know. There's just so many things, and it's not just them. It's like any type of service when it comes to mailing, with the handling and all that. It's all pretty the same. But as far as USPS, I mean, I do ship a lot of packages through USPS. A lot of packages under a pound, over a pound, and things have changed. The price of first class mail, it went up from what it used to be, but at the same time, it takes too long. Like whenever I'm getting ready to buy a shipping label, it says it's going to take 5 days, and I mean, it doesn't count the Sunday. That's not really like a day. I know they're moving behind the scenes, but still, it's like, that's quite a lot of days. And especially, let's just say that for myself, any order that comes in, it's going to take at least a day or two to fulfill, right? For me to package and everything. There's times that at the moment the order comes in and I'm available and I can fulfill it the same day. But for the most part, it's going to be 1 or 2 days. So let's just say I fulfill it in 2 days after I received it. And then if it goes out first class from the option that was selected, that's already a week. So it's going to take my customer a week to receive their package. And I was like, I wasn't cool with that. I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to wait a week on a package. And I know my customers don't want to wait a week. And then I'm thinking about the prices, and I'm going, well, what's the difference between the price of priority mail versus first class? And sometimes it was even like $3, $4, $5 of a difference. That I was like, all right, I gotta think about the pros and the cons on everything, And at the same time, what's important for me is insurance. I mean, I need insurance on all my packages. Everything that goes out, everything that leaves my store, it needs to be insured. I can't be shipping stuff out uninsured. Anything can happen. So I made the decision, and I said, you know what? Everything's being shipped out is going to be shipped out priority mail, as far as items that are under a pound. If they're over a pound, now with the situation with UPS, you know, that sorting out, then, you know, it's going to be through UPS, and that's going to be a different rate on there through them. It's that one's always going to vary. I'm not going to have control over that. But as far as like smaller packages that are under a pound, my decision is for those to go out priority mail, so they're there in my customer's hands within 2 to 3 days, which is really fast, you know. But then them shipping out of Pasadena and Los Angeles, it's gonna probably even be even faster, one more day even quicker, just because they're already leaving from a centralized area right there. So that's gonna help a lot, you know. And I know some people don't really care as far as like the timing, like, oh, you know, I'm not in a rush, but the majority is the I need it now, and like they're in the middle of a project, you know. Most orders that I get from California, the minute I ship them, they'll be in their destination by either the next day or in 2 days. They'll already be there. Because I'm in the West Coast. East Coast, let's say New York, New Jersey, Florida, when I ship out to those areas, those are the ones I'm telling you guys that it's going to take about 5 days, maybe even a week to get to, which I think it's a long time, right? For like first class. But if I'm shipping in priority mail, boom, 2-3 days, it's there, fast. And then this way, customers happy, and they're tripping out that, dang, it's already here, you know? And this way they could get to work right away, or they're in the middle of something, and they could get it up and running, you know, continue on. So those are quite the benefits of that when it comes down to the shipping with the site. There is a lot of items that did come in from Mr. Model, Zoom On. I also got those resin kits from PZY out in China. Those came in. A small quantity that I ordered of those came in. There's only, I think there's only like one left from the ones I got. I've already shipped some out, and you know, I'm just excited to see what more comes out from the company right there. A lot of the stuff looks like very, very high quality on the material of the resin right there. So we'll see what other kits they end up coming out with. And you know, I don't know. Right now it's been fun, like just like, you know, building these models and trying to progress, trying to push myself to the next, you know, and I'm not getting frustrated with the builds. I feel like back then there was a little bit of frustration on some parts, but getting the help, you know, from other friends and model builders, and just gaining that knowledge of stuff, it's helped like progress to the next and to the next. And I always felt like if I wasn't going to progress, or if I wasn't going to push myself to try something different, or to try something else, maybe a new paint line, then I'm not really pushing myself, and I'm just going to get bored. I'm just going to get really bored with what I'm doing, and it's not going to feel satisfying, you know? And I feel like with these model builds, we have to learn to not get frustrated, and those things that happen that we look at like, oh man, I messed this up. You know, those are like our little trophies. We gotta look at those little things as little trophies. Like, yo, like I messed up this glass right here. It's all fogged up because I used the wrong glue. I should have used canopy glue or white glue with the crystal clear instead of using CA glue, you know, cement. I shouldn't have used any of that stuff. Like, this is what happened. But then you get to see what it does, and later you might look at that could be an effect. You might be like, oh dude, I'm gonna do this effect on on this, and this is the way you do it. As much as you could be like, oh, I messed this up, you just learned something there. You learn that when you use that glue on that, this is what happens. So always remember that, but then always know that that could even be an effect for a paint job or a car or a clear part. And as opposed to tossing the car and doing all these things or whatever, I would say though, like if you lose the motivation on a build, there's nothing wrong with selling the build, giving it away, or trading someone, having somebody else have their take on the car now. Give the car some life, for sure. I think that's pretty chill right there. But as far as like painting and doing all this stuff, if you see somebody else building something and you want to be on that level, and we go, man, that looks dope, like I want to learn how to do all that stuff, just be open-minded. Be open to definitely asking questions, getting all the components, making some purchases, investing in the proper tools, and just go for it. You gotta try it out. You gotta see how this is gonna work for you there. And it might take 2 or 3 builds to start dialing it in. Especially like if you're prepping cars, you're painting them, but then when it comes to clear coating, you're scared to clear coat. Like you just don't have the confidence. You feel that since you put in all this work into the car, into the mock-up, and now into the paint, that you don't want to mess this up, because in your mind you're like, I want this to be perfect, but then you're depending on somebody else to clear coat it for you, and anything could happen there too. There could be a hiccup or something that happened that you go, oh man, you're still running a risk no matter what. But it's better when you do it, so then this way you're pushing yourself, but you're also gaining that confidence. It's like putting another feather on your cap, and you start to really like learn and feel very proud of your build that you did it from the ground up. You did it everything from the beginning stages to the final stages of the build. And let's say on those first clear sessions, you didn't add a lot of clear to it. Well, now you learn what happens when you don't put too much clear. So then the next time, now decide to put more clear, and hopefully you get it to the level you want it to. But then if you put more clear and you start to see runs and it's dripping, then you start to realize, okay, I put too much. Now I need to dial it back. So you need to definitely do like the whole the back and forth, And I've heard friends tell me, oh, okay, I'm gonna try this out, but I'm gonna buy one of those like practice bodies, or I'm gonna buy another kit and I try that out. And like that's cool, but me personally, I wouldn't do it, because you're trying something out on a car that is missing stuff or you don't really care about and everything. But it's like, are you really gonna try, or you're not gonna try? Because I feel like that right there is like having one foot in and one foot out. If it works out, I'm all in. If it doesn't work out, I'm all out. And it's better to go all out on a car that you're currently working on. Even if you're nervous and this is the first time that you're gonna be doing a lot of these steps, do it. Just do it, because you're going all in. Your mentality is like, I'm going all in. The door's been closed behind me. I locked it. I threw away the key. I'm in here. I'm all in. You know, you want to get it painted. You want to do all this stuff, and you got to clear coat it. Boom. The polishing, that could be another thing, you know. But for now, just do it like that. I wish that some of my friends, you know, live close by or something where they could see me clear coat one of my cars, and then I could see them clear coat one of their cars. So this way, they could get an idea of what I'm doing, and I could always give them some pointers as to the session that they're doing. Because let's say they're spraying it, I could always consult and be like, you know, yeah, that's cool. That looks good right there. Or start from here, go up. Or, you know what, spray a little more right here. You still need a little more in this area. Or just let it. All right, cool. Let's let it flash, you know. Things like that. Just so it's more like, you know, chill, and then seeing the stages as it goes from there. I don't know. I think in person would be really cool. That would be like super awesome. And but yeah, just go all in. And you know, like going back to like buying an extra body or buying an extra this or that or whatever to like test stuff out. Like, it's cool. Like, it works out for some stuff, but I don't know. I feel like it prevents people from getting stuff done. I could understand if you're like the experienced modeler and you have the reasons to do that. Cool, go for it. But when you're new to it, and like you buy your first kit, you have to build those first kits. You gotta get your hands dirty, you know. Those first kits are gonna be your experimentations. Don't expect the first kit to be like right away something perfect or like a banger, like just something like so crazy, you know, because you gotta learn your skills. Still gotta hone your skills as you go with them. But if you buy like a practice one and all this stuff, you're preventing yourself. You're taking steps back to even starting on the first one, you know. And it's just like, I don't know, just go all in, you know. Crack open that first model, start working it, painting it, doing what you want to do, modify it, finish it up, see the results, and then after that, you know, buy another one and do it again, you know, and maybe follow some same steps or switch it up, and just keep doing it and doing it. Eventually, you start to see, like, you know, the what you're doing, things that need to be corrected, you know, satisfaction, things you learned, stuff like that. I still remember when I was using bare metal foil for the first time. I remember pulling out the sheet and just measuring, like, okay, the side of the 61 Impala is this long, where I'm gonna add this like chrome trim. So then I would cut a big section of the sheet, and then I'd like peel it off, and I'd just lay it on top of on the edge, and then I'd get my hobby knife and I start cutting the line, right? Like, I'd mold it with the Q-tip, and then I'd come back and I'd start cutting it. But then what was happening is that when I would cut it out, I was throwing away big amounts of bare metal foil, like huge pieces of the sheet that I was like, dang. And then but at the time I didn't realize it. I was just happy that, yo, I got the bare metal foil on the side. I was just hyped. Right? And then I ended up you know, going through a couple sheets on like a car, and it's like, come on, you don't even need that much. So then I was posting these photos on my Instagram, and this is a long time ago. I'm posting them on there, and somebody told me, hey man, you might want to do this so you can save some of that bare metal foil, because you're wasting a lot of it. And it was just, he would say, get a piece of paper and just like cut it out and kind of layer it over the trim, so you kind of get the feel for the length and the width, and just cut it out, and then be like, all right, cool, this is all I need, like a smaller size and width, and then matching the length, and then lay that over your bare metal foil sheet, and then just cut it out from there. So this way you're not over wasting. And then I started doing that, and I was like, yo, this is cool, And I learned, those were little things I learned from that. And then, switch is. I wasn't a fan of bare metal foil, like later, because I realized, man, that's a lot of work. Like, I'd be breaking the model and everything, and then finally, some of the final stages was applying the bare metal foil, and that right there, I used to be like, oh no, like it was just whack. Like I didn't want to do it. I was just very like, oh man, like I gotta do this. Like, damn, this sucks. Whatever. Like, it was preventing me from like finishing sometimes like builds, but then I was like, no, I need to stop being like that. I need to stop making that like something I don't like to do. I need to make this like my strong. I need to make this, something I like to do. So then I just kept at it more and more and more and more, and finally to the point where I was like super into it, and I was like, I like using it. I was like, cool, this is dope right here. And yeah, I just stopped, from there later, because then I started using the Hasagawa, the mirror finish. That was like the next thing I started like using right there. But I don't know, there's just a lot of stuff on there that you guys should definitely, if you want to take it to that next step, experiment, do it. Like, just push yourself to do it there. I mean, possibilities are endless right now. I know once I finish up the Kingswood, I'm already like starting to think about the next build. I'm thinking about the next build, thinking about the next paint job already. I'm excited to get to that right there. And I do have some cars that are already like prepped. They're already primered. They're ready to go. They just need paint. They need to be brought to life. But you guys will keep seeing that as the days come. But yeah, if you check out my Instagram at 65Locs_, you'll see the progression on current builds and also some finished ones on there, and just kind of the mix up of stuff and directions that I'm headed with my builds right here. So I'm like almost here. I'm gonna end the episode right here. I hope you guys are doing great and everything. Best wishes to y'all. Episode 220, 65 Locs wrapping up right here. Keep on building. Please just keep tagging me on your posts, and that way I can reshare the build and the stuff that you guys are doing. So thank you guys, and we'll keep in touch. More episodes soon. All right, guys, peace out. Later.